popular, etc. And keep in mind, these are black scholars who proposed the concept. He's actually, John Osborne, I believe he's from West Africa. Significant for him, he's around. God just passed away as well. He's very popular scholar, ethnographer. In any event, they looked at this concept called the burden of acting white in a DC school, and that's where it comes from. I will also argue white thesis when it came out, especially given that it was advanced by a set of black scholars. It was widely received initially, but it's now widely debunked. As a scholar, particularly within the academy, if you go out there and you associate children, black children in particular, poor black children in particular, and argue that they associate learning and acting white, it will be argued, I mean, it can be, you can be framed as being racist or prejudiced. It's not the politically correct thing to say today, even though people still think it's liberal, conservative, white, and black. You could lose a job that way. So my suggestion, do what you want. But to say that now is politically incorrect, that low-income children think learning is acting right. Yep.
Didn't you say last class that you agree with that?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about. We can open up with it though. Let's open up with that. Let's open up with that. How many folk actually have the piece? Let's go right there. Thank you, Janelle. Let's go right there.
You said what that called again?
The John Osborne piece, acting white. Matter of fact, let's go through the PowerPoint. Let's start here. Let's start in reverse. All right. Hold on. Let me get my notes up. I'm not saying the same thing that John Osborne and significant for him is saying. What I'm ultimately arguing for is for scholars and people in authority to better articulate what children mean, as opposed to manipulate and take advantage of the fact. So when they say something in an oversimplistic fashion, they may not have the language like you and I to really articulate what they really mean, right? When they say acting white. So they would say, and this is not what I'm saying, and this is the stuff that will get you in trouble, that kids are doing bad in school, they're dropping out of school because they don't like learning, because they assume the entire process they associated with acting white. In my opinion, that is wrong. That is racist. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm ultimately arguing, and that what the research is ultimately underscoring today in the 21st century, is that when children say learning is acting white, they don't mean they don't like learning. Right? Let me say that one more time. That's what they're saying. They don't like learning across the board because they associate it with white value systems and mannerisms and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what I'm saying. So the fact that they aren't embracing the educational process or the experience inside schools, and they're associating the way that they're being taught, and or what I would argue indoctrinated, they are arguing that that process is a white process. They want to learn for self, they want to learn for community, they want to learn for culture, they want to learn for race, they want to learn for more practical reasons. They want to learn in ways that speak to them. But in fact, and as Ferguson is arguing, but they feel like they're being trained or indoctrinated to be something other than themselves. Hence, or i.e., acting white. Right? So I would argue all kids love learning. Poor kids, rich kids, black kids, white kids. I never met a kid, in particularly a street-identified child or man, and I ask the question every time, who felt learning was a bad thing. And I'm talking about the kids or the guys who dropped out of high school. I'm talking about those guys that are in Rikers Island in high school. So I go to where the worst of the worst, those alternative schools. I never met a kid or a black boy who thought learning was a bad thing, or going to college was a bad thing. So that's the qualitative difference I would make. But let's jump into the Florida Oddball piece. Again, this piece is not moved from my perspective, but it's important that we know where it comes from.
Are we going to get this PowerPoint?
Yes, it's already been emailed out to you about 15 minutes before class.
Oh, cool.
So, what's Oddball and Fordham's central argument? Now, I would argue there is a number of Oddball's arguments that I actually like. You know, me and his brother do have some problems, but I actually like some of the stuff that he has advanced. I think the fact that he's making an argument about African-American children, low-income African-American children, and he comes from a different part of the diaspora, or he comes from Africa. I think that has hampered somewhat his analysis. But in general, he writes about the streets, he writes about these young guys, and I think in general he does do a good job. So let me preface my lecture by saying that. But what is their argument? Their central argument is this, that as a function of unemployment or economic and educational barriers, or economic or educational inequality, or blocked opportunity is how it's generally described, that as a function of this blocked opportunity, these boys, in particular young black boys or black children in D.C., most of which were black boys, have adapted in particular ways, for right or for wrong. And they have constructed particular identities, and this is Agbu's argument, and this is the part of the argument that I agree with. They have constructed particular identities to survive in and out of the school space. And because of those barriers, they have specifically done 3 things in relation to formal education. 3 things. Black high school students experience ambivalence or discord when confronted with notions of performing in school. So they don't feel comfortable in the space. They don't feel like nobody's really respecting them. They don't feel like nobody's really taking them serious. Right? Their story is not something that's really recognized by folk like us. It's seen more so as an excuse than as legitimate. And then there goes the degeneration of the relationship, and then it breaks down from there on. The other thing that they would argue is that this discord, it happens, that this has happened because whites have historically framed black children as being ignorant, quote unquote. You know, whether they are liberal or conservative, overall, they are making that argument. Okay, I'm not saying all whites think this way. I think it's variation. That is always my argument. So some whites think this, some whites don't. But they also are raising the issue or the fact that because of this notion, this historical notion, if you will, of black children being ignorant, it has contributed to the discord that we see inside schools. And generally, that historical analysis, if you will, is not recognized by people like you and me. So if a child feels like that he or she is being treated like they are ignorant, generally we would say they're making excuses. I mean, you and I probably know that that's probably true, right? And according to them, and this is where we part, because of the historical legacy, if you will, because of this discord, black children, in turn, have learned to doubt themselves. No empirical evidence for that. In fact, low-income black children generally, probably, empirically speaking, low-income black children have the highest self-esteem out of any group in the country, right? And that's a science talk. But when the Agbus and folks were around before the new researchers came around to really document what's what, they were arguing, and what flew was the fact that these children doubt themselves, they have low self-esteem, they're suffering from black self-hatred, what we call today internalized racism, and as a consequence of all of that, they associate learning with acting white. Thus, they don't want to learn. They want to do bad. They want to drop out of school. They want to be suspended because they don't want somebody making fun of them for acting white. I went to a school by the name of Vanguard High School. You know, I wouldn't say it's the worst school in the world, but it definitely was a school that was hampered with a lot of problems. A lot of school violence, a lot of the stuff that we're reading about. I always was in AP classes, grade 1. Right? I definitely acknowledge the fact that children are made fun of for doing well in school. Children in my high school were made fun of for doing well in school. But again, to me that is not predictive or indicative of children who do poorly in school thinking that learning is a white thing or not a good thing. I have never been made fun of in my educational experience, ever, for doing well in school. Even today, when I go inside the prison, or I go on the block to do research, right? I'm not out there hanging out. I'm heralded, you know, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I'm trying to underscore the point that the hood, the streets, these children, at the end of the day, value learning. I've never to this day, I'm 33 years old, but I've never to this day been questioned getting a PhD.